And welcome on into the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe Podcast. Here's George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. A after dark edition of the Blue Horseshoe Pod. We are recording this late on Wednesday evening, George, because boy, even though we just recorded on Wednesday or Tuesday, 24 hours ago, a lot has gone down since we've been gone. The Colts have agreed with and come to contracts with Kenny Moore, Raekwon Davis, Ronnie Harrison. Jannard Avery had a big brain fart there. That was one of those where I've said it, I looked at it, I forgot how to say it. Jannard Avery.
And
very
fairness,
busy
he
time.
missed the whole season with a knee injury. So
yes, I will say he was not exactly on my radar when it comes to free agency and big time signings, but Jannard is back here for the Colts. So a flurry of moves. Also, George, they have a rule proposal that we'll get into here as well that is very interesting, that has impacted the Colts directly. But the biggest free agent so far they have signed on Wednesday, George, they have got their quarterback, and you could argue they have upgraded their quarterback position, going from Pro Bowler and Gardner Minshew to comeback player of the year in Joe Flacco.
Elite Super Bowl champion.
Elite.
Flacco. So no, it does make for an interesting list of quarterbacks who have been in Indianapolis since Andrew Luck retired. I mean, you go through here: Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, now Joe Flacco, Nick Foles was here for a couple minutes. You know, it's a very crazy list. And I think Joe Flacco, for me, it's a good move. I mean, you talked about it last week. Well, it feels like last week. You talked about it just on Tuesday.
It does not feel like yesterday.
It feels like we've been through at least a week cycle here on the news, but it's barely been 24 hours. One of the things you were mentioning, like, what do they need in that backup? Well, one of the biggest things is somebody who can be a true mentor to Anthony Richardson, somebody who's that extra set of eyes over there on the sideline, can kind of help him read a defense, help him figure out what's going on in game planning during the week. Joe Flacco's been in the league for 16 years. I think he's probably seen as much as any current player. He's third among active players in passing yards. And we know he's still got it because he went 4-1 down the stretch, helped the Browns make the playoffs. So if he does have to be forced into action for a week or two, you feel like you're comfortable that he can get the job done. And what a turnaround season for him. I mean, I know folks in New York are probably like, you're excited about Joe Flacco. I mean, after his tenure with the Jets, they're probably not as excited, but he showed in Cleveland that he can still play. And I think it does give Anthony Richardson that veteran who can see something on tape that maybe only a guy with 16 years of experience sees, and pass that along and maybe make a difference on game day.
That's what I'm like, fired up. Like, again, it's a backup quarterback, and hopefully, right, knock on wood, we never see Joe Flacco actually play. We just see him on the sidelines with a little earpiece in, holding the clipboard, but never actually stepping on the field outside of maybe a meaningless Week 18 game when the Colts have the #1 seed locked up and the division already won. Maybe that we could put Joe Flacco on the field there and have him have some fun. But like, I am truly excited because, to your point, like, you are bringing in a guy who's seen as much. Like, there is no quarterback right now that has seen as much as Joe Flacco that's active. He has seen it all. He's won big games. He's won a Super Bowl. So he's seen the lows. He's seen the highs. And I think that's just going to do wonders in the QB room for Anthony Richardson now, again, as we talked about on Tuesday, who is essentially a rookie quarterback, at least on the field. He's comfortable in the offense. He's comfortable with his teammates from the offseason and practices. But now, at least in terms of playing experience, is essentially a rookie. I think he's going to be a tremendous asset and resource for Anthony Richardson. And I like the direction Shane Steichen has decided to go in with the backup position, in favoring experience over playing style. And also,
absolutely.
Sorry, George, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I was going to say, absolutely. And I think, one thing we don't have to worry about is him going downfield, right? I don't think you're going to be worrying about Joe Flacco taking too many checkdowns.
Well, that's what I was just going to bring up, in the sense that, like, in a way, like, obviously physically, he's not going to be running zone reads like Anthony Richardson. So the play style there is not the same, but the play style is comparable, like you just said, when it comes to throwing the ball deep. I mean, Joe Burrow came in right off the couch late in the year for the Browns, and he ended up this season, he was 6th in all of the NFL in terms of yards per attempt per pass, 7.9. So he is not afraid to throw the ball deep. I believe he averaged over 300 yards passing per game as well. So this is a guy that for how we think this Colts offense is going to run, where Anthony Richardson is going to be taking a good amount of deep shots, and that's going to be a big part of the game plan. It's going to be if again, worst case scenario happens and we do see Joe Flacco in the field, it's going to be quite the opposite compared to Gardner Minshew, where we are sitting here begging Gardner Minshew to throw one ball deep, honestly, just for the hell of it, just to keep the defense honest, and get 11 guys, out of the box. And now, if we do in fact have to see Joe Flacco on the field, at least you can keep the playbook in terms of the deep shots the same, and that's going to be a night and day difference. But at least that part, the passing part, fits more into what they're going to ask Anthony Richardson to do, which is in one way, despite again the physical presence and not exactly fleet of foot, doesn't match up. The mindset should match up, which again should kind of keep a lot of the offense similar. God forbid if Joe Flacco has to play.
Yeah, and go back to the combine, and Chris Ballard said, the most important thing to him wasn't necessarily finding somebody with a similar playing style. It was finding somebody that the coaching staff trusted to win games. There isn't a history here between Shane Steichen and Joe Flacco, but I mean, all you got to look at is last year when he went 4-1 as a starter, and throughout his career, he's won games. So I think you're going to feel very confident about that. And I think it's probably, in terms of like institutional knowledge, it's probably the best the Colts have had since Philip Rivers was here, as far as somebody who's just been everywhere, seen everything. It's certainly in that Philip Rivers, Matt Ryan mold of, just having been through every style of defense, probably faced every coordinator in the league twice. There just aren't many surprises for Joe Flacco, and that should really aid Anthony Richardson.
I can't believe, George, the tremendous football mind that you have has blacked out the legendary Eagles career of Joe Flacco. 2021, he was there with Shane Steichen up until like mid-October when he was traded to the Jets. How can you forget that?
So he's like Rich Kotite, an Eagle and a Jet?
Eagle and a Jet, and I don't believe he took one snap for the Eagles. He wore number 7, which is interesting to see him kind of wear that number.
You can't give him Michael Vick's number. You can't do that. That's somewhere that's against the rules, right?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, unless he runs like Vic, and I don't think Joe Flacco's ever gotten accused of that. I would agree. Save the 7 for the fast guys, and maybe not Joe Flacco. But I mean, I guess we could technically say him and Shane have worked together. Yeah, although again,
briefly. Well, that explains it too.
Breathing the same air.
It does make it make more sense, because what that means is Shane knows what Joe Flacco is going to be like on the practice field. He knows what he's going to be like in the meeting room. And that's important when you're trying to get somebody who's going to come in. I've never heard anything bad about Joe Flacco. I don't know about you. I've never heard a teammate or a coach complain about his work ethic, complain about, his demeanor, anything like that. But this means that Shane has firsthand knowledge there. And if it was 2021, I believe Jim Bob Cooter would have been there as well. So I think both of them would have had, firsthand knowledge here of what he's like. Again, those are things you don't know until you get in the building. You can talk to everybody around the league. You can get as much info as you can garner, but until you're actually out there, you don't know what the practice habits are, what the meeting habits are. And obviously it's somebody they feel like will rub off the right way on their young quarterback, Anthony Richardson. We know one thing about Richardson. If we learned anything last year, he's a sponge. He's going to soak up anything he can around him. And so bringing in somebody with good habits, who has seen it all, you would think it's only going to accelerate the growth for Anthony Richardson.
And because of, albeit brief, but that time spent together in Philly, I'm going to assume, because one question we had was for when you throw out a guy like Ryan Tannehill as a potential backup for the Colts, as someone that could sign a free agency, one of the questions we had was, would Ryan Tannehill actually be a good backup? Would he accept the role and do what a backup needs to do, especially when you're behind a young quarterback that does, that could use some veteran seasoning? I think it's safe to say, even though, if you really think about it, Joe Flacco's not been asked to be in that role a lot. Everywhere he's gone, he's had either been the starter or had a chance to compete for the starting job. He's not been in many places for as long as his career has been, he's not been in many situations where he, from day one, is the backup. And so, again, brief, but I think that's at least a sign that both Shane Steichen and Jim Bob Cooter believe that there's going to be no issue. And I mean, also too, if you're Joe Flacco, you're signing, you know what you're signing up for, right? It's like
Right.
he like, oh, I'm going to come here and compete. If he's willingly signing, not trading for him, he knows what he's signing up for. So there should be no concern either that he's going to be a bad influence or not help AR like we've seen other quarterbacks kind of do in different scenarios. He should be a good soldier. And again, I think that's only going to help Anthony Richardson's development and make him a better quarterback faster when you have just basically the encyclopedia of NFL knowledge in Joe Flacco's brain in your QB room next to you every single day.
And when he was there in Philly, it was a similar situation, right?
Right.
Jalen Hurts' second year, he had started at the end of the year, but he still hadn't had a full year as a starter. And so the Eagles were still trying to learn some things about him, and they want the veteran backup in the background. So I think it's something that there's apples to apples here in a lot of ways. Not only did Shane see him, he saw him in a situation that's very similar to this, and who knows? Maybe the history will repeat itself all the way around, and if Anthony Richardson remains healthy, they'll flip Joe Flacco for some kind of compensation during the year. But I don't think that's the plan by any means. I did see a report that the deal's, I believe, 8.7 million, but only 4.5 guaranteed. So it's a very
Yes.
incentive-laden contract, in case he does end up starting and playing a number of games and winning a number of games, then the money will go up. But it certainly sounds like, I'm sure, because Gardner was told this last year, when they hadn't even drafted their rookie quarterback yet. I'm sure Flacco has been told that the role is to back up and mentor Anthony Richardson. I'm sure he wasn't told he's going to come in to compete to start, and so he's accepting that from the start. So that's good to know.
So the Colts go from Pro Bowler to elite quarterback. A nice job by Chris Ballard this offseason. Another nice job in making a move that we both talked about on Tuesday. The Colts kind of, when you sign, or I should say, excuse me, extend Michael Pittman Jr., sign Grover Stewart, the big name we looked at. Okay, what's next on the Colts checklist? Kenny Moore. Get that deal done. Do not allow him to go somewhere else. Keep that veteran presence in the secondary. Credit to Chris Ballard on Wednesday or Tuesday, excuse me, after the pod was released on Tuesday afternoon. Chris Ballard did it and did it in big time fashion, making Kenny Moore the highest paid nickel back in all of the NFL. 3 years, $30 million. George, money well spent.
Absolutely. Kenny got a little choked up today. On Wednesday, we were able to go down to the facility and talk to the first 6 guys who re-signed with the team. And Kenny, was asked specifically, being the highest paid corner again, because he was the last time he signed a contract, and what's that mean to him? And kind of paused for a minute, and you could see that it's not lost on him everything he's been through. We all know what 2022 was like for him. The soft holdout in the spring, then not really clicking with Gus Bradley right away, struggling on the field. The team was falling apart around him, and it really looked like at that point it was going to be the end of Kenny Moore's time here. But he, to his credit, and in complete character for him, committed himself during the offseason, sat down with all the relevant decision makers, and came back in 2023 determined to show, the kind of guy that he was. Went out, had an outstanding season, got himself right back in the mix where he's once again going to be the highest paid nickel cornerback in the league. But I think, and Chris Ballard kind of mentioned it in statement that the team sent out today. It's important for that young secondary's growth to have Kenny Moore there. He's not a real vocal guy. He's not going to be a rah guy, but he's a very big do as I do, kind of guy. And he just sets that standard just by the way he practices, by the way he prepares, during the game week. And I think he's one of those guys that the young players come in respecting because they've seen his highlights. And I think he's a kind of player a lot of other players really respect because of the way he cut in 2017, comes here, he's on special teams, builds his ways up, becomes a starter, becomes a Pro Bowler. That's what they're all looking to do. And so he doesn't have to say much or do much to get respect. A lot of these young guys come in, they immediately gravitate toward Kenny Moore. Having a guy like that to lead by example, it's worth every penny.
I agree. And also, too, like you look at the position, Like it is kind of mind-boggling in a way where receiver salaries are going up, and then also in the same breath, corner salaries are now starting to explode, and that market is. And it's like the one area between receivers and DBs that's not really taken has been the corner position, the slot corner position, excuse me, which like I would argue, George, is becoming more important by the year. Where you look at how talented these receivers are, there's no more just stick them on the outside and leave them there. So many of these guys, like the Vikings put Justin Jefferson in the slot, the Bengals put Jamar Chase in the slot. Like any good receiver now in the NFL can play inside and outside. And so Kenny Moore's value is only increasing. And so even though it's another record-breaking contract at $10 million a year, it still feels like a steal with what he can do, the experience he brings, the talent he has, the veteran presence. Like it feels like this is just, again, another tremendous bang for your buck for the Colts, where you get I think an increasingly important position cover with a guy you trust and feel good about at a price that, again, if technically for the actual position itself of slot corner is setting a record. But when you think about what he does and is important to the defense, $10 million a year for a shutdown corner is a steal.
Yeah, and he's versatile. I mean, we've seen him play on the outside in those rare situations where the Colts are in a base defense. He's on the
Right.
outside. He's not entirely in the slot. But I mean, you talk about those slot corners, they have to defend everybody. And look at the Super Bowl. If you're in the slot, you're going to get matched up from time to time with Travis Kelce. You're going to get matched up from time to time with George Kittle. Not to mention all the guys that you were talking about going the slot. And really, who doesn't have at least 3 wide receivers on the field at almost all times these days? It's very seldom that's not the case. So those slot guys are increasingly important and among themselves. But I think everything Kenny's able to do, he gets his nose in there in the run game. He's effective in that regard. He can play that sort of hybrid safety spot at times, depending on how you're lining up and what you need of him. He can go on the outside and match up out there. It's just, and then that's before you even mention his character, his commitment in the community, and the leadership that he provides in the locker room. All of that together, yeah, I think you look at $10 million and you don't even pause to offer him that.
Let me ask you this question. When again, with record-breaking money for that position, do you think that contract takes the Colts out of the L'Jarius Sneed sweepstakes?
I don't think so. I think it was probably something factored in when the Colts had this interest. The thing about Sneed is, from what I've been told and what I've heard, over the course of this, is not a new thing on Indianapolis's part. This is something they've been monitoring throughout the season. So, and you would think that during that whole time, they were also assuming that they were going to re-sign Kenny Moore and that it wasn't going to be a really cheap deal. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. I'm not going to say that, a deal is imminent or anything like that. But I have been told now, a bunch in the last couple of days, actually, that the Colts are interested. They're very interested in, whether or not that's going to lead to a deal isn't entirely up to the Colts, right? Kansas City's got a lot of say in this. Some other teams around the league are going to have say in this too, but I don't think the number for Moore alone would necessarily keep them from making this move again, because you're going to have 3 corners on the field most of the time. And no matter who that third corner is, whether it's Juju Brents, whether it's Dallas Flowers, whether it's Jalen Jones, they're still going to be on a rookie deal. So I don't think you're going to, bust the bank there. It might affect what they do at safety. If they're able to do the Sneed deal, it might be Sneed or a safety. We'll see. I think the fact is, though, period, from the way I was told, it's not just Sneed. The Colts are looking aggressively at the secondary, period. We know Ballard's looking at free safety. He said that. He put that out there. They've obviously got to figure out what they're going to do at strong safety. Julian Blackman still hasn't been re-signed. I think that's a situation where he's going to test the market, and we'll see how that turns out. They may need to make an addition there as well. And obviously, they're looking at corner if they're talking about Sneed, but there's also some other veteran guys out there. There'll be other options, and we've seen Ballard be patient in this way, many times. I think the two to me that stand out the most as far as like him being patient and landing somebody that people were really excited about, Justin Houston, I think was 2014. He just waited it out, was able to sign him late in free agency. And then obviously Stephon Gilmore a couple of years ago when he was able to get him towards, late March, I think.
That was like,
Um,
yeah, opening day, I think, for baseball is when I remember that
right,
alert
right.
coming down.
Late in the process. And that's not uncommon with him. So, I think whether it's Sneed or whether it's somebody else, Justin Simmons, whatever big name you want to mention, I think the Colts are kicking the tires. We'll see what happens. I expect something to happen at safety or corner, maybe both. But what it is, we'll see as the market dictates.
I would agree with the sentiment that this doesn't take him out of the Sneed sweepstakes, in part because, like, look at the speed at which these deals were done, right? Like, Michael Pittman Jr. extended, I think it was minutes before free agency or the legal tampering period started. Grover Stewart re-signed within hours of the, window opening. Kenny Moore signed within 24 hours. All these, Colts signed what now, including Joe Flacco, 7 guys. And we are now, as we record this
8,
on
I
Wednesday night,
think.
8 guys. You're right. 8 guys within the first technically 11 hours of the season starting, right? The new league year starting on Wednesday. Technically, then the first 11 hours, the Colts have signed 8 guys already. And so the speed at which those deals are happening are because it seemed like the Colts had a pretty damn good idea of what they're going to be spending each position. There's not a lot of haggling, and there wasn't a lot of surprise either way, which helps if you're budgeting, if you're Chris Ballard and everyone in the front office and you're budgeting your off season, the salary cap, it's, if you get those numbers pretty accurately, like they seemingly did with how fast they're able to get these deals, you have an idea of, oh, well, this is what we got and let's go make a move, instead of being surprised where this thing drags out. It's like, actually, we didn't think it was going to be this expensive, but the market drove it up. So now we spent $10 million a year more than we, planned. And now someone got to go back to the drawing board. These deals happen fast because everyone's on the same page. They knew what they were going to spend. And like the budget was basically already made with these deals for the most part, roughly in place, which should, again, be optimistic if you want to get a L'Jarius Sneed deal done, that you can, like you said, do both. Get all these guys signed, but also still make a big splash here and still be hunting a big name to add to the secondary.
I think it helps that the vast majority of these guys are in-house guys, guys that they've done deals with in many cases before. So they have some kind of relationship with the agent already, and they've already worked that out, and they know everything they need to know. You're not trying to call around to a bunch of different organizations and try to figure out, how does this guy work on the practice field and what's he like in the locker room? You got all that information right away. I think that speeds a lot of this up. The only 2 outside additions right now are obviously Joe Flacco, the elite backup quarterback now on his way to Indianapolis, comeback player of the year, and Raekwon Davis, who is a defensive tackle from Miami and is quite frankly just a mountain of a man. I think
Yes.
6'7", 352, 325. When I dyslexic at times with the pounds, it's one of those two. It's either 325, 352. Either way, massive, massive man, a nose tackle, which means that was kind of to me a low key position of need because yeah, Grover Stewart's a starter, but when he was out, you saw what happened behind him, and they gave him about 150 yards a game. So bringing in Raekwon Davis gives you that depth that you need, and it's also part. I mean, I don't know how many times Ballard has said they want 8 guys. They want wave here of 8 guys. He's not just talking about defensive ends. It gives you maybe the opportunity to play Dio Adengbo more on the outside. Taekwon Lewis was already playing more on the outside last year. Gives him maybe the opportunity to play more on the outside. I'm sure they're still going to have some kind of NASCAR package or whatever they want to call it, where you can bring those 2 guys in and rush them from the interior or put one of them alongside DeForest Buckner. But it's just another body that you can get in there in goal line situations. I mean, I think he's a goal line defense in and of himself in Raekwon Davis. So not a big name in terms of, or at least not a big position in terms of, like the free safety or strong safety or corner would be, or receiver, obviously, or tight end. But I think a low key need for this football team.
I think what it also does too, you mentioned Grover Stewart. I think it also allows DeForest Buckner to get a blow as well. Like, this is a guy who, I mean, he's a 3-down defensive tackle. He obviously, took on a major workload when Grover Stewart was out for a third of the season. But like, this is like, he's on the field all the time. And so now if you can at least give him a blow, again, should it help keep him fresher throughout the season, hopefully ward off some injuries. I mean, that's also a guy too, to his credit. I mean, he's been banged up. Feels like every season he's dealing with legs, with knees, with arms, with shoulders, and he just plays through it all. And so even if it's just, a few snaps here and there, you plug in Raekwon Davis maybe next to Grover Stewart and give DeForest Buckner a blow, it allows him to hopefully stay healthier. And also, too, you don't lose, in theory, you don't lose that much because, like you said, a lot of guys that were replacing Buckner and or Grover were kind of tweeners. They don't have a ton of big bodies in the middle that fit. So it's like you're kind of, putting Dio in there, who's not really a defensive tackle, and you're sliding Tyquan Lewis in there, who's not really a defensive tackle. And so, like, you're losing size when one or both are out at the same time. And now you can just kind of like you said, get that second wave going where you still can give your top guys a rest, keep them fresh, but also not lose any size in the middle and still, have a hulking presence when one or both of your run stuffers are on the sideline.
You want to talk about a giant line too. If they want to go really big, they could line up in certain situations with Odengbo and Buckner at end and Davis and Stewart in the middle and a goal line. That you may see that from time to time. That would be like a Mount Rushmore as far as their build out there. So, it just gives new defensive line coach Charlie Partridge and obviously Gus Bradley opportunities to mix and match here. And kind of, I'm sure you can get different combinations against different opponents. If you're going to face a team like, say, Baltimore that's going to run a lot, maybe you do see more of Davis and Stewart in the middle and move Buckner out on the edge that day, and then if you're going to see a pass heavy team, maybe there's less of Davis and Stewart and you see more of Tyquan Lewis and Dio Dangbo coming on and playing on the inside. So I don't think it's ever bad to have that kind of versatility and be able to mix and match. And, you could do it from down to down. It doesn't have to be week to week.
Man, I'm salivating over like a defensive front of DeForest Buckner, Dio Dangbo on the outside, inside Grover Stewart, Raekwon Davis, maybe like outside linebacker will put Kwity Paye as well. Just have like a fearsome fivesome across the defensive line and say, come, you want to run the ball? I dare you. Oh my God, that would be tremendous.
3rd and 1, here you go. Run into this.
Good luck.
I mean, there are situations where you could definitely envision them putting that group out there. But I think it does. If you're Charlie Partridge and you're making the transition from the college game to the NFL, having a bunch of pieces that you can mix and match like that. We're not even talking about younger guys like Adi Tamiwa Adebari, who didn't play a ton last year, but when he did, he was one of those guys that got moved inside more than you probably would like to see. He can maybe go back out to the outside now. Titus Leo flashed some a little bit in preseason, but was on IR. There's a lot of bodies in that mix that they can now try to, first of all, have good competition to make the roster to begin with. And then secondly, on game day, you can really mix it up and kind of throw in, that piece that you need to try to get the result that you want in the moment.
You know what they should do? Like, I feel like they do this a lot in high school football, but I think the Colts should bring it back. Like, you have the biggest guys lead you off the team bus. You have the biggest guys, go to midfield for the coin toss. First game of the year, your 3 captains, Raekwon Davis, Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner. I don't know. We'll see what the schedule says, but you put those 3 out there, you send a message. Good luck trying to get through us. We are here to dominate you. George, I'm in for it. Raekwon Davis, game day captain number 1. Shane, make it happen.
It's definitely an identity for this football team now. I mean, the Colts have been trying to get more physical over the years with Chris Ballard, and I think throw Raekwon Davis into that mix. They've got a very, at least from a size standpoint, formidable defensive line.
That they do. And as someone, as you can tell, who got psyched out very fast in the football field, I would be running for the locker room. If I was a captain on another team and I saw those 3 massive hunks of humanity walking out there, it's okay. You know what? Not us. Not today. Not today. Maybe
pulled a hamstring on the way out there real quick there. Coach, I think I'm done for
Can't play, Coach. I can't play. Oh, speaking of getting more physical, speaking of competing, George, I loved what Zaire Franklin had to say from what was just, by the way, a great question by, I don't know who the reporter was, but just an A+ question from one of the Colts beat writers today, asking Zaire about goals for next year. And George, since you are, if you couldn't tell the sarcasm, you are the man who asked the question. Zaire Franklin, to your question, said,
Yeah, I asked him because, last year in training camp, he was kind of talking about he didn't care about the low expectations from the outside because they've been all over the place. And during his career, they've been picked to win it, the division. They've been picked to finish last. It didn't matter. And so I said, internally, what are the expectations now after you come so close to the division title last year? Obviously, 20 yards away from beating Houston, and then who knows where they go from there. And he said it's got to be to win the division title, and then he kind of emphasized that period. And I think that you saw that a lot today. He said it the most bluntly, but I know Grover Stewart talked about it a little bit, how the expectations have risen. And one of the best quotes that Franklin had today was basically that, it's time for them to get serious now. They've all been paid, and now it's time to bring some banners into the stadium and not just leave with good memories. And I think, Michael Pittman talked about it. That re-signing all these guys shows the talent that they have in the room, the belief they have in them. They were obviously close, and I know there's been a lot of criticism out there at the beginning of free agency of why are you going to sign all these guys from a 9-win team and run it back, and it's the same team. It's not the same team. I mean, first and foremost, Anthony Richardson's going to be the quarterback this year. That's the plan. It's a very different team right there. I don't think the plan is to have Jonathan Taylor out for the first month of the season, or for him to miss, was it 3 more weeks late in the year? So a full season from Jonathan Taylor, a full season from Anthony Richardson with the group they had last year. They feel pretty good about that. And there's still more additions coming in free agency. They're not done. Obviously, Joe Flacco, the most recent name, but there are other things out there. We talked about L'Jarius Sneed that could happen. There are other gains that could be made. And there's also next month a little thing officially called the annual selection meeting that I believe is going to be of some importance to this football team with the 15th overall draft pick. So, it's a criticism that I don't understand, because I wonder, the people that are upset with all these re-signings, would you rather all these guys were signing somewhere else? I'm not really sure about the negativity there.
I've seen it too, George, and I honestly thought it was just the small minority. But look, if you were listening to this pod and you're upset that the Colts are only re-signing their own players just to go 9-8 again next year, you are an idiot and you don't know football. That says that you want to talk about blunt and Zaire Franklin being blunt, George. Let's just be blunt. You don't know football. If you don't think that the combination of Anthony Richardson playing, hopefully, but if he does go what we say, right, fingers crossed here for both of us, if he plays 17 games and Jonathan Taylor is out there for 17 games next year, there's no holdout, there's no ankle injury. If you don't think that is bare minimum over Gardner Minshew and Zach Moss, no disrespect, a bare minimum 2-win increase with just those two guys being on the field for 17 games, I don't know what you're watching. I don't know what we're doing here, George. Just like you said, it's the shell of the same team that was 20 yards away from winning the division with a backup quarterback. Now you are getting the number 4 overall pick that not just people in the Colts community, but people nationally, in the small sample size they saw of Anthony Richardson, liked what they saw, believed in what they saw to where this guy can pan out. Now he has to prove it, but there's belief at least that this is more likely than not to work out in the Colts' favor. And you get, what is Jonathan Taylor, George? The second best running back? Third
He's
best?
up there.
Top, but worst case, let's just be very conservative. Top 5.
Yeah, easily top 5. Easily top 5.
Easily top 5. So you get a top 5 running back and a promising young dual threat quarterback added to your offense for a full 17-game schedule.
And you're hoping
that is 11 or 12 wins next year.
And you're hoping that you unlock more of Alec Pierce's game, with the deep ball, and get him a little bit more involved in things. You're hoping that Josh Downs has grown from year 1 to year 2. You're hoping you have a healthy Juju Brents out there on the defensive side to change things. There's still areas that need to improve. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say that the 7 years under Chris Ballard so far have been good enough. No one wants just 1 playoff win and 2 playoff appearances. But the arrow's pointing up right now. And I think bringing back the guys they brought back, these were, I'm not going to say every one of them was the top guy at his position, because I don't think that's true. But they were all, especially in the case of Grover Stewart, Michael Pittman, Kenny Moore, Zaire Franklin, you're talking about guys that were in the upper echelon of the players available at their spots. If they had signed from the 49ers or the Lions or the Packers or Dolphins or wherever, I think there'd be a lot more excitement about these guys joining the team. They're good football players who help you win football games. Now, do the Colts have to put it together on the field? Do they have to take a step forward as a franchise? Absolutely. And no one said that more plainly than Zaire Franklin. He said point blank, the goal next year is to win the AFC South. That hasn't happened since 2014. I don't think it's a crazy goal. It's exactly what the goal should be for this football team. But I think the fact that they're bringing back the core of that group is what gives them the confidence they can do that. And again, they're going to add more to it. That was step one. Bring back the guys that helped you do this. And now they're moving on to that next phase, upgrading where they can. I would say they upgraded at backup quarterback from Gardner Minshew, who did a really good job for him last year, but has his limitations, to Joe Flacco, who got his team to the playoffs, who pushed them across that line and got them into the postseason. And now we'll see if they can do the same thing at corner and at free safety and pass catcher. Again, I'm going to put wide receiver and tight end together. If they can do the same thing with a pass catcher, I think that this football team can take significant steps forward next season.
Just to go back to your first point, you said when this whole topic started, like the reaction would be like, what is your, like, if you think this is a bad offseason or you just don't understand the Colts bringing back a team that went 9-8 last year, then who are you replacing them with? If you don't want Michael Pittman Jr. signed, who are you bringing in that's better? Would you rather have Michael Pittman Jr., George, for 3 years and $70 million, or would you rather have Calvin Ridley for 4 years and 92? I'd rather have Michael Pittman Jr.
With what Pittman means to this football team, definitely. I mean, I think that's a big part of it too, is so much of free agency is really fit. You know, what are you asking a guy to do and what is he capable of doing? And they know what these guys can do because they're all doing those roles already and doing them well for this team. So I think it's been a solid offseason so far, but there's still work to do. And I think the Colts they recognize that. They're still out there signing people. I think the next stages, we talked about this on Tuesday, is really defensive backfield is where it starts, corner, safety, maybe two safeties. We'll see how that all plays out. And then I think ideally you're able to take care of that in free agency and you go in the draft and you focus a little more on the offensive side.
And like there are waves to it. The first wave, the A players, right? The A free agency players will put in quotes, although there were to credit. There were some good players on the free agent market this year compared to other years. But like that first wave, all those guys were eaten up. And now it goes to the wave two, and like this, the safeties especially, a very deep position in the free agent market where there's a lot of safeties out there, not a lot of teams biting at the moment. Chris Ballard is going to get it. Like this team is not done. And so if you are frustrated, number one, look at the alternative reality of if you are upset the Colts are bringing back the same team from last year, then tell me then who you're going to bring in that's better than Michael Pittman Jr. on a better deal, who's better than Kenny Moore, who's better than Grover Stewart on a cheaper deal. Like you could say Christian Wilkins, was it realistic the Colts? Like you can't sit here and say the Colts should have traded for T. Higgins, signed Christian Wilkins, trade for L'Jarius Sneed. Like you want to live in fantasy world, it's literally impossible to execute what you're asking for. The Colts have done the bare basics. And by the way, George, this was telegraphed. This is not a shock. This was expected, and this was the right course of action. All these players that we're talking about are good players. Now with an upgrade at quarterback for most of them offensively, especially for Michael Pittman Jr., and you hope defensively that now, especially in the secondary, a year of experience for a lot of those younger guys helps get them in the right direction. And there's still there's still money and time to improve corner and safety, both in the draft and in free agency.
And maybe even edge rusher. I know they brought Jannard Avery back, and I know they feel good about him. I haven't seen the numbers on that deal yet, but I doubt it's a prohibitive contract that's going to keep them from making any other moves at that spot. And you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you mentioned it, I think it was Tuesday, that, in that second wave, you start getting additional releases. Teams sign guys and then they move on. The Chargers are definitely one to keep an eye on. I know they restructured Khalil Mack. They've got a decision to make on Joey Bosa by Friday. You don't know if he
Oh
could be
yeah.
on the market here soon. I mean, and that's not to say Joey Bosa's coming here, but the idea is that you don't know who's going to pop free in the draft. You know, does Dallas Turner fall to number 15? If he does he fit what the Colts want to do? Can you put him out there? You know, there's still a lot of upgrades to go. And I think it's an exciting time for this franchise because you feel like for the first time since 2019, before the retirement, that you've got a young quarterback that you can build around. Now, maybe they'll be proven wrong in that, and then things will take a turn the other way. But right now, with the evidence that they have, the evidence the rest of the league has, they're building around a young quarterback who they feel really good about, and they feel like they can start taking steps towards a championship. And as far as I hear Franklin's concerned, not taking steps toward winning a division title. That's the goal in 2024.
Really fast put a bow in that conversation, George. Where would you rank the Colts right now? Like the goal is to win it. Again, it's right now March 13th. We just both ranted and raved for about 10 minutes about how this team still has time to improve, and we expect them to improve. If they don't, then you can get on Chris Ballard. A month from now, we can start talking about not coming through and doing what it takes. But right now, there's still a lot of time. We expect moves to be made. Would you say with just the first wave of free agency that they have in your mind surpassed bare minimum the Texans and maybe the Jaguars as well? Where would you say? I mean, they're above the Titans. So 1, 2, or 3 right now. Would you say they are?
I put him probably second right now. I feel like you got to give Houston the edge because of the way that CJ Stroud played last year and because that they have made some good moves themselves and are trying to take care of a lot of business. They brought in Daniil Hunter, which will help them replace Jonathan Grenard, and the run game should be better with Joe Mixon. So, I feel like Houston's doing good things as well, but I honestly think this division is going to be similar to the AFC North next year in terms of the competitive nature of it. I think you're going to have a really good Houston squad. I think the Colts feel really good at what they've got. I think Jacksonville's going to have a chip on its shoulder, wanting to come out and play better football and get back into the mix and be talked about as a division champ. And Tennessee, we'll see. I mean, they're doing some things. It really, a lot of it is going to be tough in year one because they're making the transition to a new head coach. But we saw both the Colts and the Texans overcome that last year and end up being there right at the end, and a game that turned out was for the division title. Didn't know it at the time, but the way it turned out, it was for the division title. Tennessee could be better than people are maybe expecting too. I think you could have a division where all four teams, at least in November, are still very much a part of the equation, trying to push for playoff spots. I would rank the Colts second right now. I go Houston, Indy, Jacksonville, Tennessee, but I don't think there's a wide gap between any of them.
I would agree. I agree and disagree. I agree with where the Colts are second. I think but I think the three are bunched very close together. Texans, Colts, Jaguars, like right there. I would leave a gap and then put the Titans for. I just don't. I think right now
They have more to prove.
they do, and I just don't know their direction. Like they're sort of going for it with signing Calvin Ridley and trying to give Will Levis a big time weapon, but also they lost Derrick Henry, and I'm like, I have a lot of questions about Tennessee's roster overall and the talent on it. I mean, we've lauded, at least I'll say, won't speak for you. I'll speak for myself. I've lauded Mike Vrabel, but I'm sure you wouldn't disagree that he is. I would argue he's been the best coach at getting the most out of the least talent. Like they are. I know the record didn't show it this year, but like the Titans have like every single year they're winning 8, 9, 10 games. I mean, 2021 they had the number 1 seed, or 2020, whatever it was, 2021 it was. They had the number 1 seed when Derrick Henry was half the year. Mike Vrabel does more with less, I think, better than any coach in the NFL. And I think the Titans took that for granted when they fired him. And I think, like, I like the Brian Callahan idea and fit, but I think in year number 1, they're going to realize just how little talent they have and how much Mike Vrabel was able to get the most out of them. So for me, like, they have a lot to prove. I just don't think they're also very talented. So there is a significant gap between the Jaguars and the Titans for 3 and 4. But I think 1, 2, and 3 are all like, I would probably put the Colts 1, George, if the Texans did not get Daniil Hunter. Because if they lost Jonathan Grenard and were unable to kind of fill that void at pass rush, I would have been like, oh boy, this is now a team that I think is, out there for the taking. The Colts, I think, can be right there with Anthony Richardson coming back. I'll give them the slight edge and the respect they deserve for winning it, for having CJ Stroud prove it. and win a playoff game as well. I think they deserve that respect going into the season, bare minimum. But I think the Colts are right there. Like, this is going to be like, I'm with you 100% in the sense that the AFC North, Ravens, Bengals, Browns, I would say are all pretty close and all right there. Jaguars, Texans, Colts, obviously very close last year. And I think again this year, very, very close. And there's a chance, George. We'll see how, the rest of the year breaks out. There's a real chance I think 3 teams can make the playoffs this year. The AFC North last year sent 3 teams to the playoffs. I think the AFC South could do that this year.
It's going to be a really fun race. I think what's interesting about Titans, I think they're changing their identity. I mean, obviously, Derrick Henry's gone. I don't think you're going to be that run-heavy team that they were. They've got Calvin Ridley. I think DeAndre Hopkins is still there, still on board.
Yep, 2-year deal.
Seems like they're maybe trying to copy a little bit of what Callahan had in Cincinnati with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Obviously, it's not that level right now. You don't have Joe Burrow and under center, but trying to give Will Levis the weapons, I think they're going to throw the ball a lot more. I mean, you just figure you hire an offensive-minded head coach, it's probably what's going to happen. But the question there is that makes them, to me, the boom or bust team because you have no idea how that works. If it clicks right away, maybe they can take off like the Texans did last year. If it doesn't, they may find themselves, quite a bit behind. I think the other 3 teams all have fairly proven stuff. I mean, probably the biggest question between Jacksonville, Houston, and Indy right now is Anthony Richardson's health. Beyond that, you're not projecting a lot for these guys. I mean, Jaguars obviously got to figure out whatever went wrong, last 2 months last year. But beyond that, you've seen guys on that team do it. You've seen them put up good numbers and play good football. Obviously, Houston, probably the second half of the year on, we're one of the better teams in the NFL last year. The way that they finished up, and then the Colts, again, the excitement there with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson is really gonna be fun to watch. That being said, Baltimore's gonna be fun to watch with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. There could be 2 of them now, that quarterback running back duo that could be really fun to watch over in the AFC.
We talked about the intimidating coin flip with the Colts, but now with Raekwon Davis, DeForest Buckner, and Grover Stewart, let me tell you, I am happy for Zaire Franklin that he got paid and that at least in the regular season, he does not have to tackle Derrick Henry in the hole.
Right.
I know they're used to doing it twice in the division, but now you add Patrick Ricard as like the 300-pound fullback. I would not want to be Zaire Franklin looking at a hole in which you have Patrick Ricard as a 300-pound lead blocker and Derrick Henry behind him. That's one, George, or I would go down. I would block myself. I would fall down. All right. I'm not tough and I wouldn't try to be.
And you got to know where Lamar Jackson is too. I mean, it may be a fake. So it's going to be a tough run game to defend there in Baltimore.
That it is. And it's a good year for the Colts to not have to have them on the schedule in 2024, at least in the regular season. We'll hold that hope for the playoffs and we'll welcome that for sure. But at least in the regular season, not upset to say, not on the schedule this year. Damn, that's a shame. Last thing we'll talk about here is the AFC North brethren of the Ravens, and that is the Cleveland Browns, because, George, we also learned with the league year officially starting on Wednesday, that is also time now for teams to submit rule changes for the 2024 season. I wonder why, George. I can't remember a game. You can jog my memory. The Colts submitted today a rule change proposal that coaches can be allowed to challenge any and all penalties inside of 2 minutes at the half. I don't know why the Colts would feel so strongly about that, George. Maybe you can add some more context, but that's interesting.
No clue as to what might have spurred that decision by the Colts. Certainly not 2 calls in particular
or calls, yeah,
against the Browns late in that football game. First of all, it's hilarious that they submitted this just because it's just the right amount of petty, right? To go in there and submit this proposal league. Second of all, it has 0 chance of passing the competition committee. It would be glorious chaos for about 2 minutes, just to have everybody, throwing their flag and I'm challenging this. But can you imagine how quickly it's going to start looking like the NBA or college basketball? The refs are going to be going over to the monitors pretty much after every snap, right? I don't know how many challenges you're going to get. It sounded like it was unlimited. That definitely is not going to pass. And maybe it's within the regular rule, so you got to save some of those challenges. I just think you're looking at chaos. I mean, not only would you have challenges left and right, because anything close, a coach is going to challenge, obviously. But you're also so many of these things are judgment calls. How many of them will be overturned? I think so. What we found out when they went to the pass interference rule after the obvious blown call with the Saints, you go the next year and you can just challenge pass interference whenever you want. I don't remember any of them being overturned. I'm sure at some point one or two were, but it's such a judgment call that I just don't know how often you're going to have that flipped. And so can't see it. First of all, nothing that comes from a team that doesn't come from the committee itself ever passes the competition committee to begin with. But this one is just, it's hilarious. I mean, you could just see Jim Irsay on his computer that night after the Browns game, firing this off, hitting save till March 13th. I don't know if he's got something to automatically send the email, but send it off there, 4 o'clock, March 13th to the competition committee. Here's our proposal. Don't let that happen again.
I will say the timing is, I mean, obviously they're only allowed to do it now, but I love the fact that like you have to wait like 5 months after it happened. And it's not like they forgot or, oh yeah, let's just throw this in there. It was like 401, bang, send, get that in. We want to make sure this is the first rule you look at here in 2024. The memory is like an elephant. They do not forget. So I love that. I'm with you 100%. That's just hilarious. But
Do you
in
think it was like
reality,
RE colon Cleveland on the subject line there?
CC, they add the Browns on the email. Look out, you got lucky. This ain't happening to you again. But like in reality, though, you're 100% right. The pass interference replay rule is the exact reason why it will not be implemented. Nor like from my, I don't want to hear your perspective. From my perspective, I don't want it implemented. Like, forget like if there was a chance it could be approved, I wouldn't want it approved because I think for this is how I feel about replay, George, is that when it comes to penalties, at least, it is such a judgment call and so rarely overturned that I think it's more maddening when you have to sit there for 2 minutes, watch a replay of a holding call that looks obvious and hear them say no hold or pass interference. And they, like the reversal on those pass interference calls. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. It felt like 0%. It probably was in the range of 5 or 10%. Like it rarely happens. So
Really
I
though.
just feel like it makes it worse. Like, obviously we're like that loss against Cleveland, still pissed about it. But I think I'd be even more mad if both of those flags were thrown. We had to sit there for 2 minutes, watch the replay, and then be like, the call on the field
Ruling on the field
stands.
stands.
Or it's changed from pass interference to defensive holding. And it's like the same like principle.
Still first down.
Right. And so it's just like they're not going to like it's almost like a human nature. Oh, my friend Johnny made the call. Like I'm not going to make him look bad, so we're going to just uphold. And it's also like Johnny made the call. Now Jimmy's reviewing it, right? It's like rarely you get the opportunity where the guy reviewing the play is one who threw it. And even still, it's even worse than if the guy who threw the flag is reviewing his own play, that you can't have the judge be the jury and the executioner at the same time. It's like the judge is not going to overturn his own ruling based on just looking at it again. So like the odds of you actually getting a call to go in your favor, either overturned or in the even I think a rarer example of no flag being thrown, you challenge for like a holding call that should have been like, that is just like, no, we don't need more replay. That's the last thing we need. And so I think you're right. It's not going to get any legs. And honestly, George, even though the Colts got screwed by it, nor should it.
And it's one of those things where I always think, like, if you're watching the game at the sports bar, half the bar is going to say that call should be overturned. The other half's going to say it was right to begin with. I mean, it doesn't. I guarantee you, no one in Cleveland right now is thinking those were bad calls. Those were the right calls that were 100% correct. So it's just that's the way it goes. I guess what I'm trying to say is what would the standard be to overturn? A lot of these other ones we know, okay, may not like the catch rule, but we know what the points are. We all know 2 feet down, you got to survive the fall, all these things, right? Survive the ground. What would the standard even be for pass interference? Because I feel like that is the most undefinable penalty in the NFL. And if this crew's going to call it, that crew's not. I don't know how you fix that one. It's a gray area. It's always going to be.
And holding too, right? It sounds like
And
all
holding
penalties
too.
could be reviewed. So like offensive, I mean, if you watch I know it's a cliche, but it's true. You could literally, if you wanted to, call holding on every single play. So
Every play.
now we're gonna have to go zoom in on the guard. Is he holding? Did he grab? Did he get enough jersey? Was there a twist there? Like, we don't need to go through physics to see if there's a hold or not on a 20-yard completion that honestly, like, had nothing to do with the play.
The other side of the field like that. And you know that would happen. I mean, if you institute this rule, coaches are going to try to challenge for holding on every touchdown in the last 2 minutes. I guarantee.
100%. You'd be stupid not to.
Mm-hmm. And it rest like which number? I don't know. One of them did it. Look at it.
Just look over there. Just find something. All right. Find something I want you to, I like to hear. Yeah. It's just, like you said, it just opens up. Like, I get why the Colts propose it. And in theory,
Absolutely.
it sounds good. In practicality, it would be the worst thing ever. It would open up a brand new Pandora's box.
It absolutely would open up Pandora's box. Sorry to step on you there.
No.
But he's the most hilarious rule submission. He can get points for that.
You know what happened, right? If this is like approved, like Anthony Richardson would like make a highlight reel play, run for a touchdown, flag would be thrown, and it's like you look back and it's like Quentin Nelson maybe had a half of a hold. They bring it back because that would absolutely happen. The Colts' own rule proposal would be used against them without a doubt.
To cost them that division title that Zaire Franklin's aiming for this year too. I mean, it would be at the worst possible moment in the season. There's no doubt about it. I give it nothing 0, so I'll give it a 0.1% chance of actually being passed.
So you're saying there's a chance. How about this too? Let's add an addendum to the proposal. How about we can go back retroactively too? So it's approved. Let's go back to week 7 really fast. Can we add that as well?
In the proposal. Go back.
We're gonna replay week 7 really fast. The last 2 minutes, there's an incorrect pass interference call, so we're gonna pick it up. Colts are up. I don't know if the score is this point. I think they're up by what? 6? Up by 6.
38-33, maybe won the final 39-38.
Yeah.
I don't know. It yeah.
Let's replay it.
Go again. Let's run that right back.
Oh man,
I mean, give them credit for trying, you know. None of these proposals will pass. That's my prediction, just because they never do. The only proposals that ever pass are the ones that the competition committee comes up with themselves. You might see a change to the kickoff because they've been talking about that. I think it was Rich McKay basically said, what we did last year didn't work. I know there's some talk about adopting the XFL rule. I'll be honest, I've never watched the XFL, so I don't know what the rule is. But maybe I'll if it does change, maybe I'll check out one of those games this spring and see what happens. But you just don't see these things pass, and because most of the time they're exactly like this one. They're proposed from the point of view of one team to fix one specific problem that they had the year before.
You're also right about that. Any team proposal, most of the time what they're proposing has only happened to them, nobody else. And it's one of those unfortunate 1 in a million sort of situations. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think in reality the Colts will see this rule implemented anytime soon, but the pettiness is not lost. That is for sure. Bonus points there.
The San Francisco 49ers propose a rule to eliminate the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl.
Now it is only 3 quarters. We're going to retroactively take away Patrick Mahomes' ring. No back-to-back champs.
To 2019, we're going to take both Super Bowl appearances are only 3 quarters long.
And so now we're actually going to give Jimmy G his job back for the 49ers because he's a Super Bowl champion. So the 49ers never would have cut him if he won a Super Bowl. So Brock Purdy's now out of the picture, and Jimmy G now is unsuspended because there's no way he's taking PEDs if he's a Super Bowl champion. So let's just rewind. And now after we give proper credit, 49ers 2 Super Bowls. Jimmy G now is a franchise quarterback. We're probably talking about him as a top 5 guy. Let's fast forward 2024. Okay, now all is well in the world, George. Good call.
See, it's easy to fix these things.
If Roger Goodell needs co-commissioners, we are here. We are here for the chaos. That is, listen, that would be an interesting March when we go back and retroactively do it. That's for sure. The NFL will be very relevant in March, maybe more than March Madness. So you want to talk about,
They want to steal the headlines year round, right? Here's how you do it. Retroactive rule changes.
they've stolen Christmas Day from the NBA. Now next up has got to be March Madness. Let's just take it from them. And so I think that is us as commissioners will get it done, Raj. Give us a call. We'll only take a tenth of your salary.
Am I nuts, or is March Madness a week late this year? I feel like it was always this week.
It is a week late. I'm glad you mentioned that because I mentioned to my friends and no one else was with me. Everyone thought I was the idiot. I said, it's always like St. Patrick's Day weekend, like
Right.
is when Selection Sunday or when like the first four, when the first 4 days of the tournament always start. I don't know if it was, I don't know, like in terms of why yes, the tournament is a week later. I don't know if it's because they started a week later in October. I don't know if they had an extra break, like, spread things out. I had no idea why, but yes.
But it gave the NFL free
March
agency
Madness
clear line this week, so they were able to just gobble it all up.
Although I will say, as we record this late Wednesday, if this was truly back on schedule, having wall-to-wall games on Thursday morning would have been pretty cool. Would have been pretty fun.
I'll tell you, it's the best weekend of the year, right? I mean, you get that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and every game matters. They're all coming down to the wire. It's the most fun. We'll see. I'm hoping to cover some games in Indianapolis again this year. It's always my nice little break. I'm usually with Purdue, but I think the way things shake out this year, I might just have general coverage in Indy. I'm here for it. And
I'm shocked they would
school.
allow you back after last year.
Yeah, they probably won't. They're probably
Purdue, that is.
Look at the credential list and be like, nah, no, you're gone. I can't really blame them on that one. I mean, it is my fault. I definitely cost them that game against Farley Dickinson, 100%. But no, I mean, it's always a fun time. And then I've been able to do some color commentary for local high school games. They got to run state finals. We get the Fab Five at Michigan, right? High school team has 3 freshmen in the starting lineup trying to go to a state title. So lots of fun watching them play. Hey, it's basketball season. I'm here for it. It's good.
Anywhere, George, we can listen to you. So it's Saturday night. You're on the mic, play by play.
Yeah.
Can we listen to you break it down?
It should be available on the IHSAA website, ihsaa.org, because I think you have to go through all of them now for streaming purposes. Now that we're this late in the tournament, semi-state, so every class is down to the quarterfinals. They'll play the quarters and the semis on Saturday. We'll see. I'll be up in Michigan City, Indiana, so lots of fun. 3 hours from here. It's going to be a long day, but you know what? It's Hoosier hysteria is what we call it. It's our version of March Madness. Lots of fun. Get to go out there, watch these long runs. It's fun too because we talked about before, but the high school level, the families get so involved, and so you get to see the community kind of come together, and it's a lot of fun to be on these runs with teams and get you fired up, get ready for the Colts season and a deep playoff run they're about to make, right?
Yes, I like it. I like it. Really fast here before we go, George. You have a signature Mike Breen style bang. Like, do you have a signature like call? No?
No. My buddy, he's
Boom
a play-by-play.
shakalaka.
He's carrying the show. I'm just along to provide some stats every now and again, and
You had the analyst role?
Yeah, I got the analyst role, so I just kind of jump in there every now and again, and say, hey, that whole idea of making a basket, that's a good idea. They should do more of that. Really good in analysis.
You should be like Walt Clyde Frazier for the Knicks. Dress up in crazy ass suits and just all the analysis you give rhymes. He's shaking and baking, dishing and swishing. Now that could be, George, that could be your new thing here starting Saturday.
It's pretty much only in the postseason because that's pretty much the only time that I'm available to do it. They might limit it even a little more, if I do that. But we'll see. It's always worth a shot. But I mean, last week we were at Newcastle, Indiana, which is the largest high school gym in the country. So, it's always fun to get in there. And so they had 8,000 fans there Saturday.
Wow.
Which is just insane. But that's Indiana high school basketball. It'll be a lot of fun to see how things go if they keep marching on. End up at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. There's a 2-week break this year, like the Super Bowl, because they're taking a week off. Normally, the state finals would be next week, but Indianapolis is hosting the NCAA tournament. We're gonna let the NCAA tournament come through, and then a week after that, they'll play the state finals. So, we'll see. We'll see if they're able to advance, get to that state championship game. If they do, it's the first time since 2016. So, lots of big stuff happening here. And it's that way. All the communities that are left in Indiana, they're all feeling the same way right now. They're pumped. Long day Saturday, but we're going to find out which 8 teams are going to Gainbridge Fieldhouse to play for state titles.
IHSAA.org. Clear
Yep.
your schedules on Saturday. Listen to George. Break it down. Hopefully 2 games George is calling. And then the finals.
11 a.m.
That
Eastern is the first one.
go.
Marquette Catholic and Liberty Christian. So it'll be a barn burner, I assume. I think it's the third time they've met at this stage of the tournament. So Marquette's won the first 2. So, huge game. Grudge match.
A lot of history.
It's how it goes. Tradition. That's what we're all about. 49 other states. It's just a game, but this is Indiana.
So this sets up perfectly for the next pod. We, again, are assuming it's going to be, I'm not going to assume. We're going to schedule for next Wednesday, normal time, is when we'll be back here with you. But like we're doing right now, recording on Wednesday night, if news breaks, if L'Jarius Sneed is a Colt, if T. Higgins is a Colt, let's just get crazy. Joey Bosa is a Colt. Let's just add them all to the team at the same time. If we get a big bombshell of a news story, we will be back with you, which is why you got to subscribe wherever you do get your pods. Check us out and subscribe on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod. Not only will we give you the latest news on the Colts, we also will have to break down some of George Bremer's analysis from some Indiana high school basketball and see if he will be making his way to Gainbridge.
You never know what you're going to get, right? You never know what you're going to get on a Blue Horseshoe. That's why you got to hit that notification bell to make sure that you don't miss a moment. And who knows? Who knows what the future holds? How many more free agents are on their way? I'm pretty sure, it's a spoiler here, but I'm pretty sure we're going to start turning towards draft talk here pretty soon too.
Oh, it's coming. It is draft season very shortly here. Very excited about that as well. So a lot we're going to break down here in the next few weeks. But at least right now in the interim, have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend, a early happy St. Patrick's Day. George, have a tremendous call on the mic. Looking forward to it. And we'll talk to you next week right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.